Hi, this is Roberto for CToots Plus, and today we're going to show you how to work with the hair particles in Blender. In this first part of the series, we'll focus on the particle options in the panels and the options we have available in the particle mode to comb and define our hairdo. And that's it, let's start. Okay, let's start. I'm going to start working with a plane and show you uh, the options that we have available in the particle mode. There I'm just turning on the grid. I don't really know why. But that's it. We're gonna start with this plane and just go to the object buttons and select the particles in the submenu. And with the object selected, add a new particle system, and from the drop-down select hair. By default, there's is set to have 100 particles in there, but we don't really need that much. There I'm changing the normal value so the particles grow from the face. And I'll change the number of starting particles. Perhaps one is not enough for this. Leave it at 10. And random and even just define the position of the particles in the face. So this is it. The thing about having a few particles is because they're going to act as parents, and if we activate the children for the faces, we can get the same result with a much better performance than if we had 100 or 1,000 particles. Sorry. And there I just activated the children option, and let's have a look at the children panel for a bit. Now, I'm not happy with the preview on the viewport, but that's okay. First off, we're going to change the steps. This means how many segments our particle is going to have, and the render option below it is the same option but for render. Then there's this slider that randomizes the length of the particles, so it gives a little bit more of variation, and we can have it a bit more realistic. Then there's the clumpiness and shape of the particles. Clamping, as you can see, clamps the children around the parent. If you choose a positive value, it will do it for the end of the particle, and if we choose negative one, it will clamp the beginning of the hair. You can just changing the options in the children panel, you can get a lot of different results. Now let's just leave it that way, and let's see how it looks when we change the shape. As you can see, it's already a lot of difference. And now we have 3 different options of roughness. I'm not really that keen on using them, but it adds a little bit of randomization that it may be useful for some kinds of particles. You may have it find it useful if you're doing grass or something like that, but it's not that really helpful when doing hair. I'm going to add material, but not really useful right now. And there's the kink and branch option. This will give us extra options. So let's take out the roughness and see what they'll do. First option we're going to see is the braid option. So you can see it creates braids with the children particles. We can control the shape with the different sliders and controllers that are there. And next is wave. It gives a wavy shape to the hair. You can see there's a lot of possibilities like this with this. Radial option and curl for curly hair. But we're not going to use these options really. I'm just showing you so you can see the possibilities you have with the hair system. And that's it for now. We're almost done with the particle panel. You can change a few more options there, and there's a dynamic and physics panel. You can control a lot of different options in there, but we're not gonna worry about it now. So now we're going to delete this plane, and I'm going to add a head. I've downloaded a human base mesh done by Sean McIsaac, and I just cut the head from there, and let's import it and add some hair to it. Actually, you can see here that there are a lot of folders in there that you don't usually see, but since I started testing Blender 2.5, there's some options in here, especially that has changed. But that's not important in any way. And now I'm going to import also the eyes from the base mesh, just for the sake of having them. So let's see. First off, I'm going to turn set smooth on both objects, and now the grid is distracting me, so let's take it out. Alright, this is the head we're going to use. I'm not going to work on it a bit. I'm not gonna have any textures or options in that. It's just to stand in there. And let's see what happens when we add a hair particle system to the head. So we turn on the normal a bit, and as you can see, it's a complete mess. The particles are scattered around all over the surface, and that's not really what we want. We want to control where the options are. So we're going to use this option in the extras panel that's called density, and you can assign a vertex group to it. So let's see how we do that vertex group. We could go into edit mode and select the faces we want to have in our vertex group. I'm just gonna show you. I'm going to select a few faces, and you could hit the new option in the edit buttons, and we could add a vertex group, but it's a lot easier if we use the weight paint mode. So if you activate weight paint mode, your mesh is going to turn blue by default, and wherever we paint, the color is going to change from blue to green, then yellow, and then red. And red is 100% weight. So and I'm gonna use the wire. I'm going to use the X mirror option in the paint options. So whatever we paint in one side is going to be reflected on the other. And let's paint where we want to have hair on our head. As you can see, this gives a lot of possibilities. I'm not making it bald, but it could be an option. So let's keep painting, and there are some faces that I don't really like how they look, but I like the back of the ears. And that's quite alright. Let's see if you make a mistake like I just did. Just change the option in the paint panel to subtract, and there you can paint out all the weight you don't want. Yeah, take out a bit of there. I'm quite happy with this. We're not gonna need any more now. So there we have it. If you see the left panel in the edit options, you can see that there's already a new vertex group that's created because of this. So let's change its name to hair. Nothing really original. And now we have a vertex group, so we can now add the particle system to our object, and we can assign it to define where the hair is going to be. So let's take the normal value again. You can see it's the mess we had before. And now in the extras panel, click the drop down and select your vertex group, and there we have it. There's hair only growing from where we painted. Now I'm not really like how it's positioned. I just checked the random and even options, so we can have it spread all over the vertex group. And let's change the amount of particles, and we'll start working on this. I left it in 500. We need quite a bit of density in there. Well, we'll talk about it more later, so don't worry. And there, I just activated the children option for the faces. You could also try particles, but in this case faces is a little better. And there I just changed the amount of children particles that are seen in the viewport. But as you can see in the next option, there were already 100 children active in render time. I just want to have all of them in the viewport so I can see them clearly. And I'm just changing a bit the clumping and shape of the children. Okay, we'll do it with a bit less parents. And I guess this is alright. We could start working with this. Just changing a bit more and seeing how it looks. And there we go. I'm changing the random length again, and also the steps, so the hair will bend more naturally later. And okay, there I'm changing again the amount of particles. It's important that you have a good density so you can look better later. And there I'm just doing a test render. It will look awful, but it's just so you can see that right now the head has disappeared, and this is because we need to to check an option in the visualization panel. So hit the emitter button, and if we render again, we'll see the head. This is something that it's a bit weird every time you work with the particle system in Blender, and you end up wondering where your mesh has gone, and it's good to know that. And there I just selected strand render. This will make our renders a lot faster, and also adds a new panel called child simplification, or whatever, something like that. And if you activate it, there will be a lot less particles, and it will be a lot faster to render, but I'm not gonna use it. It's a good option to have in mind if you have problems with memory rendering of, or the object is far away from the camera, but we're not gonna need it now. And I guess this wraps it up for the particle options. So let's just change to the particle mode, and let's see what we can do in there. To do so, we just need to set editable our particle system and select particle mode from the drop down. There you can see only the parent particles. The children have disappeared. But if you bring up the transform panel that is adapted to our particle mode, you can select show children from there. I'd rather do it that way because you can get a better look of how the hair is going to look without tapping out of particle mode. Also, there's a few different options for the particles to be selected, just like we have with the faces and edges. We can select just one key of the particle, if it was a vertex, and move it around. This gives a lot of control. Also, you can delete any keys you want. So if you want the particles that are next to the ears to be shorter, just select the keys you want, press X, and delete the keys. This also works for the whole particle, but we're not gonna do it right now. And so let's start. I'm going to do the same for the other side and delete some of the keys. And once I stop doing this, we're going to start having a look at the options we have available in here. So hit A to select all the particles, and we're going to start working on them. And the first option we're going to try is the comb option. It's just does what its name says. You can change with F and Shift F the size of the brush, like we do when sculpting or painting. And if you have the back faces hidden and start combing, you'll see that it only affects what you're seeing. You can change this behavior by toggling this button in here, like you do with the back faces of a mesh. So now if we comb the hair, it will do the same for all the particles. This is a handy option for starting, but later on you will need more control, so it's a good idea to turn it off. And there I'm just moving it around quite randomly. We're going to do something similar to this later, but it's just so you can see how the comp works. There, I'm quite happy with that. And now we can go into object mode and see how it looks. The preview in the viewport is still weird, but it looks a lot better than we had before on the plane. Now we can move it around however we want. But that's just for sure, we're not doing anything serious right now. Okay, next up is the smooth option. This will make the particles to try to be straight again instead of being curved by your combing. And it's quite useful, and well, it's smoothing. You can you know what it will do. And now let's see, the next option is going to be buff. This gives separation and volume to the combing. Right now it doesn't look that good, and it's not very useful with this hairdo, but it's a good option if you have the particles too close to the mesh and you want your hair to have a bit more of volume. Also, you can change the mode from add to subtract, and it will do the opposite. But that's about it. Let's see the next option where I'm going to smooth everything again. And let's have a look at the weight option. This is important because later on in the next part of our tutorial, we're going to transform the hair system into a soft body so we can animate it, and the weight of the particles is one of the important values of how the hair will behave later physically. I'm going to play right now a bit with it, but it's not really useful right now because I'm not really working with how it looks. You can before editing anything, you can try the weight paint, but if you have any more particles later on, you will have to weight paint everything again. So just keep in mind that they will be very important to animating the hair. And as you can see, if you change the strength amount, it will get whiter. If you go to the maximum, it will be white, and if you go to the minimum, it will be almost black. And there I change to the next option, which is length, and as its name says, it will change the length of the particles. And the last one option we're going to have a look right now is cut. Again, you can imagine what it does. With this you have to be quite careful because you can mess it up quite easily. And finally there's the add option. We can add particles right now to our head. This is quite useful for a few reasons. One is that if you haven't got enough density in one place, you can slide down there uh, select, click in a part of a mesh and get a lot of new particles, and this will depend on the strength. So if you have a lot of them, you will add all that much to it, and if you change the strength to say 1, you will add just one more particle. This is quite useful for refining and adding particles that would be difficult to control uh, if they were combed at the same time as the rest of the hair. So there just I just added a new particle in the front of the head and just playing a bit with it. Later on you'll see that this is kind of a mistake I made while doing the tutorial, because I'm going to add some particles in there, and the density is not quite alright. So when we start doing renders, when we add a material to the hair and so on, it will really show how that there's not enough hair in there. But I just leave it in there because that way you can see the difference between uh, a good amount of density and a bad amount. Also, another useful option that you can already see while I'm working on this is that if you select a single particle, you can just work with this without having to care about the rest of them, which again gives you a lot of control and makes it really easy. There I'm just adding some particles. I wanted to, I don't know, make it look somewhat like Cloud from Final Fantasy Advent Children, but it will not look anything like that after all. So just so you can see. And actually, I'm just going to do that, and it's not really important, so we can skip ahead and keep working on this. Okay, I just cut out all the boring stuff. I just combed the hair like I wanted it to be and added a lot more particles to the front of the head. And I'm quite happy how it looks in the viewport, but sadly it won't look that good when we render later. But that's okay. It's just for the tutorial. If this was if I were more worried about the final result of the project, I would spend more time adding more hair. And there I'm just adding a few more particles like I did before, adding them one by one and then changing their position and their shape. And there's still one option that we haven't had a look at yet. When you add new particles, I'm gonna show you when I'm done with this one. Okay, now that I'm done adding new particles, we're going to use this option that we haven't done before, that is the interpolate. And what it does is when you add new particles with this option activated, it will add them according to the shape of the surrounding particles, so you can add more particle density and you won't have to edit this shape. There I'm just showing you clicking around and adding more of them, and yet it won't be enough after all, but that's okay. And so we're done adding new particles. And that's about it for this first part of the tutorial. In the next day we'll show you how to change this ugly gray color of the hair, and we'll do a brief introduction to compositing nodes in Blender, and finally we'll turn the hair system into a soft body so we can animate it, and we'll add a wind field so we can see it moving. And that's it. Hope you enjoy it, and see you next time.